So once you've done your research of Charles keeping, you've found your materials, and you've found the pictures that you're going to work from, the next thing to do is actually just to pull out your sketchbook. And for this week, for the first week of the project, we will be just working in our sketchbook and really sort of playing around with the different sort of mark making and things like that. So I've chosen to do Columbia Road Market. So what I've done is I've printed off some lovely pictures that I found on the internet. I chose this one because I like this lady kind of reaching over and sort of looking at the flowers, or this little group of ladies here. So there's lots that I can kind of pick up from here and kind of put into a slightly bigger picture. I really like this one mainly because of these lovely sort of echinaceas here in the foreground, and I just thought I could incorporate those into my final picture. And I just quite like this one because of the all the sunflowers here and the flowers in the foreground. So really the idea for you for the first week is to just print off some of these pictures, or have them on your iPad if you don't have access to a printer. And what I'm asking you to do this week is not to directly draw a picture, and copy this picture and recreate it. What I'm asking you to do is kind of maybe print off a few pictures and just play around with different elements of them and see how we can then put that together into one whole picture, which is your kind of response to a kind of busy marketplace. So for me, this is going to be my starting point. So this is a 2-week project, and so for the first week, what I thought we would do is spend a little bit of time just playing around with different images and just kind of loosening up and drawing. So as I've shown you before, I kind of had printed out lots of images for me to work from, and I've also got some other ones on my iPad. So what I was going to do was just kind of demonstrate me doing a little kind of sketch of this little scene. I'll just bring it a little bit closer up so you can kind of see it. I've got this man in the foreground holding these lovely tray of flowers, and then I've got a little kind of grouping in the distance as well. So what I was going to do is just have a little go at doing him and the two little characters in the back. So for this, I was going to use my little twig. I was also going to use my dip pen if I need it, and my bottle of ink. Okay, so I'm going to start off with him first, and I'm just going to kind of zoom that up and just start with his head first. Okay, so what I'm looking at is to not reproduce it kind of 100%, but just try and be a little bit kind of faithful to really kind of what's going on in the picture, really. So hopefully you can kind of see my mark making. I know it's a little bit faint, but I'm kind of starting off with his little ear first. Just getting that angle correct of his ear, and then kind of going into his kind of hairline a little bit, and that kind of comes down like that. Okay, so I'm just looking at this little area here. That kind of then leads me to his collar, really, and it kind of pokes up a little bit, and then it kind of comes down a little bit. If I go back to that top part here, that kind of goes up there a little bit, and then I've got that kind of top part of his head, and then that actually just leads me down to his forehead, his eye socket there, I can just kind of put a little bit kind of reference of his eye, and then his kind of nose coming up like that. And I've got his top lip coming there, and I've got the bottom lip doing something like that. Then I've got his chin doing that. Top of his forehead, his hair. That's the back of his head. It's kind of doing something like that. Okay, and I've got his head pretty much there. And his collar sort of coming out like that. So from the back part of the head, I can kind of do his hat, which kind of goes off my page a little bit. And that kind of comes down to his little lapel. There's another little kind of label here. And then I've got another little one kind of coming somewhere there like that. That then kind of leads me to his kind of sleeve and arm, really, which is kind of doing something like this. Okay, so I've kind of got his arm. So because I don't know, I'm not quite sure how far to bring it, I'm just going to stop there. And I'm going to go back and kind of start looking at some of those kind of flower, those sort of 3 leaves there. And I've got that leaf here, I've got something else here. There's another sort of bigger leaf kind of here, and then another one here. Yeah, okay, so now I know that that's that kind of crease of his hand and his sleeve. Kind of doing something there, and then I've got his hand, his thumb. And the rest of that hand. So I'm just kind of putting it in very, very simply. So at the back of his elbow here, I'll just move that a little bit out of the way. I've got his jacket kind of coming down to here, and then I've got his kind of money belt. So I've kind of sketched him out, and I'm sort of quite happy with that. So then I'm going to kind of come back up here and just look at, so where that sort of second leaf is, there's that lady's hand there, and then I can start building her up, and I can see that she's in level with his nose. So I'm just going to put a little mark there, and perhaps her hand is going to be sort of somewhere here. So I start with the hand first, just put a little circle there, and the top of her head is somewhere here. You know, I don't need a huge amount of detail with her face. because I can shape it with the kind of dark that lovely kind of shadow that she's got on the side. Maybe she can go a little bit smaller. And then her other hand, she's got a very elaborate kind of coat on, really, hasn't she? You can see part of her ear there as well. Her other hand is going to kind of roughly be somewhere here. Okay, can we see that there? So that's that relationship that I'm looking at. That's her hand, and then the rest of her arm. Okay, so let's go back to the tray that he's holding. So it's a very sort of a dark sort of shape underneath there. You can kind of fill in those flowers and things, you know, perhaps sort of just drop down with my I can start putting some of that kind of very rough, sort of loose detail in. Of the tray that he's holding. Okay, and then at the bottom here, I'm just looking at that little wooden crate. It's kind of so you can see that using a little kind of twig is so, so useful. What it does do is it stops you kind of fiddling with kind of too much detail, really, because, I mean, you can put lots of detail in, but the bottom line is you don't have to, really. Okay, so let's put this guy in next, this little character here. So in relation to the top of her head, he's going to be somewhere there, and in relation to him, he's somewhere near in line with his forehead. So his arm actually sort of comes kind of there. So we'll start off with the arm first, because that's what's sort of connecting it to the rest of the picture. So we've got his arm here, and just kind of looking at that shape that it's making. And then we've got his kind of jacket, the top of his kind of collar, and then where does his face come? So really got his nose, and we've got a little bit of the eye socket, and then really we've kind of got his hat, and whereabouts is his ear? Maybe about there is his ear. And the rest of that is his hair. And then we've got the top of his kind of flat cap. Kind of doing maybe something like that. Can't quite see his mouth, so we'll leave that. Maybe that head is a little bit small, so I'm just gonna, make that a little bit wider. So we can complete the rest of his arm. We've got his kind of, maybe his sort of jacket, kind of doing something like that. And then that's his arm on that side. And then his foot, his leg actually sort of comes kind of something like that. Actually made him a little bit wide, but I don't think that really matters. I'm going to put some plants there because in the picture I can't quite see what's kind of happening there, so I'm just going to kind of cover that up really. So that's our man, and so we've got our lovely little grouping of kind of these three here, which is what I'm kind of looking at. So that's our kind of little scene really, and anything else that I put in now is kind of really a kind of bonus in a sense. So I can start maybe just putting in the top of some kind of gazebo here, and then the line of horizon line of shops or whatever. Perhaps his windows and things like that, which is just out of shot. So really that for me is now done. So what I can do is really sort of perhaps sort of start using a different pen. Perhaps actually I might get a brush. I might actually just sort of block his sort of trousers in a little bit. Because I think it's nice to sort of have that heaviness there, which means I also need to then perhaps start putting a little bit of shadow and things. You know, where he is as well, just adding texture and pattern. I'm actually going to block this guy in as well, because what it does do is it will then throw this lady forward. Maybe we'll just block a little bit more in here as well. We'll give this guy a dark kind of coat perhaps. And What else can we do? Yeah, we'll sort of just darken off a little bit of an area around his face. So that also then kind of throws him forward as well. Okay, so that's my little kind of sketch, and you can see I've done it in a way which is sort of very, very loose, and you know, I'm not too concerned about sort of getting everything completely correct, but because what I want to sort of try and do is to get some character. So in order to kind of recap, I'm using my twig to do my drawing and my ink. And then once I've kind of sketched it out, I'm kind of adding blocks of colour just to add a little bit of kind of depth and kind of difference, different kind of weight in different areas. And so what I've done in my sketchbook is, and I'll put this into the rest of the video, is I've done lots of little drawings like this. So the first week is really about you getting your images together and just spending maybe a day or across a couple of days just drawing, using the ink, using a dip pen, using a twig, or using some of your pens. You know, I could potentially sort of do a mixture of, you know, of pen ink. I can also start adding some texture perhaps with you know, a finer pen. You know, it's quite interesting once you then sort of start playing around and seeing what works, what doesn't work. You know, it's quite nice actually adding a different weight of line in. So that's what I want you to play around with for the first week of this project.